The door exploded inward at 3 a.m. I was already awake. 20 years of combat training had left me with a body that never fully slept, a mind that catalogued every creak and whisper in the darkness. I had heard the vehicles pull up outside, 3 of them, no sirens, which meant they wanted surprise. I had heard the footsteps on the porch, the whispered commands, the familiar sound of men preparing to breach. I knew what was coming before the first boot hit the door. "Police, get on the floor, now!" 6 officers flooded into my bedroom, weapons drawn, flashlights cutting through the darkness like surgical blades. They were amped up, aggressive, ready for a fight. Someone had told them I was dangerous. I didn't move. I said, "Get on the floor." I raised my hands slowly, keeping them visible, my movements deliberate and non-threatening. I had been on the other side of raids like this more times than I could count. I knew how quickly things could go wrong when everyone was scared and trigger-happy. "I'm complying," I said calmly. "No weapons, no threat. I'm getting down slowly." I lowered myself to the carpet, keeping my hands where they could see them. 2 officers rushed forward, one planting a knee in my back while the other wrenched my arms behind me. The handcuffs clicked shut. Cold metal against skin, a sensation I hadn't felt in years. And then I heard her. "I warned you about him." Vivian. My wife was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, watching the scene with an expression I had never seen on her face before. She was smiling. Not the warm smile I had fallen in love with 15 years ago. This was something else. Something cold. Something triumphant. She was laughing. "I told you he was dangerous," she continued, her voice carrying that theatrical edge of a woman playing to an audience. "Look at what he did to me." She turned her face toward the officers, displaying a bruise on her cheek, another on her arm, fresh, purple, damning, except I hadn't touched her. I hadn't touched her in months, not since the distance between us had grown too wide to cross. We slept in separate rooms, we barely spoke. Our marriage was dying, and we both knew it, but I had never, would never, lay a hand on her. "Sir, you're under arrest for domestic assault," one of the officers said, hauling me to my feet. "You have the right to remain silent. I understand my rights. Anything you say can and will be used against you. I understand." They marched me toward the door, past Vivian, who was still smiling that terrible smile. As I passed her, she leaned close enough that only I could hear. "I told you I'd destroy you," she whispered. "You should have given me what I wanted." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Whatever game she was playing, whatever scheme she had constructed, it would collapse soon enough. Because Vivian had made one critical mistake. She didn't know who I really was. They loaded me into a patrol car, hands still cuffed behind my back, and drove me to the station in silence. I had been through worse, much worse. Interrogation rooms in countries that didn't recognize the Geneva Convention. Captivity in places where light never reached. Pain that had made me question whether death would be preferable. This was nothing. At the station, they processed me with clinical efficiency. Fingerprints, photographs, personal effects collected and catalogued. The officers were professional, but cold. They had already decided I was guilty based on whatever Vivian had told them. I didn't blame them. Domestic violence calls were dangerous, unpredictable. They had seen the bruises on my wife's face. They had heard her story. From their perspective, I was exactly what she claimed. A violent man who had finally been caught. They put me in a holding cell while they finished the paperwork. I sat on the metal bench, closed my eyes, and waited. An hour passed. Then another. At 5:23 a.m., the cell door opened. "Thorne, Caspian Thorne." I looked up. A young officer, early 30s, clean-shaven, with the eager look of someone still trying to prove himself, was standing in the doorway with a tablet in his hand. "That's me." "Need to verify your information, standard procedure." He approached, glancing at his tablet, then at me, then at the tablet again. He was cross-referencing something. My driver's license, probably, checking it against some database. "Former military?" he asked. "Yes." "What branch?" "Navy." He typed something, waited, his brow furrowed. Says here you're—" He trailed off, staring at the screen. His typing grew faster, more urgent. I watched his face change. First, confusion. The slight tilt of the head, the narrowing of the eyes. Then recognition. Something in the data had triggered a flag, connected to another database, revealed information that wasn't supposed to be there. Then shock. His face went pale. His hands stopped moving. He looked at me. Really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. "Sir." "Yes?" He stepped back. His posture changed, shoulders squaring, spine straightening, the instinctive response of a man who had been trained to recognize rank and authority. And then he did something I hadn't expected. He saluted. "Sir." His voice cracked. I need to make some calls." "Take your time." He turned his tablet away from me, angling the screen so I couldn't see what was displayed. But I already knew what he had found. I had seen that look before, on the faces of men who had accessed my file without proper clearance. The flag, the classification level, the commendation that had never been made public. He rushed out of the cell, leaving the door open, a breach of protocol that told me just how rattled he was. I sat back on the bench and waited. The next few hours were going to be very interesting. Within 20 minutes, the station was in chaos. I could hear it from my cell. Raised voices, hurried footsteps, phones ringing with the kind of urgency that suggested someone important was calling. Through the small window in the door, I caught glimpses of officers rushing past, their faces tight with concern. At 6:15 a.m., the young officer returned. He was accompanied by a woman in her mid-40s, silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, sergeant's stripes on her sleeve. She had the weathered look of someone who had spent decades in law enforcement and was very tired of surprises. "Captain Thorne?" "That's me." "I'm Sergeant Odessa Marlowe." She studied me with sharp eyes. "We seem to have a situation." So, I gathered, "Your file flagged to 3 separate federal databases the moment Officer Crew ran your ID. I've received calls from the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, and a man who identified himself only as the Admiral and demanded to speak with you immediately." I smiled slightly. That would be Admiral Bancroft, my former commanding officer. "He's on his way here now. Said something about a Medal of Honor and a lot of classified information that we apparently aren't cleared to know." Sergeant Marlowe's jaw tightened. "Captain Thorne, would you care to explain what the hell is going on?" "I would, but most of what I could tell you is classified above your clearance level." "Then tell me what isn't classified. Tell me why your wife called 911 at 3 in the morning claiming you assaulted her, and why you're sitting in my holding cell and why I'm getting calls from Washington about a domestic violence arrest." I stood up, slowly, non-threateningly, but I could see the shift in Officer Crew's posture. He was no longer looking at me like a suspect. He was looking at me like a superior officer. "My wife is lying," I said simply. "I never touched her. Those bruises on her face are self-inflicted. She created this situation deliberately to have me arrested. Why would she do that?" "Because I'm worth a lot of money, Sergeant. Military pension, contractor fees, investments. She wants a divorce, but she knows I'll fight for custody of our children. So she decided to eliminate me from the equation. Get me arrested for domestic violence, obtain a restraining order, take the kids and the house and everything else while I'm tied up in criminal proceedings. That's a serious accusation. Yes, and I can prove it. But first, I need to make a phone call." Sergeant Marlowe studied me for a long moment. Then she turned to Officer Crew. "Remove his cuffs. Sergeant, remove his cuffs." Crew stepped forward, key in hand. The handcuffs clicked open. I rubbed my wrists, more out of habit than discomfort, and nodded my thanks. "There's a conference room down the hall," Marlowe said. "You can make your call there, but, Captain Thorne—" "Yes?" "When you're done, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about what's really happening here. I look forward to it, Sergeant. Let me tell you who I really am. My name is Caspian Marcus Thorne. I was born in 1976 in a small town in Virginia, the son of a factory worker and a schoolteacher. I was an unremarkable child in most ways. Decent student, average athlete, the kind of kid who blended into the background and never made waves. But I had one quality that set me apart. I never quit. When I was 18, I received an appointment to the United States Naval Academy. 4 years later, I graduated with honors and began the most brutal training program in the American military. Basic Underwater Demolition / SEAL Training. BUD/S. Class 231. Out of 187 men who started that class, 23 graduated. I was one of them. For the next 20 years, I served my country in ways that will never be made public. I operated in places that don't appear on maps, against enemies whose existence has never been acknowledged. I have been shot, stabbed, burned, and beaten, have killed men whose faces I still see in my nightmares. I have held dying teammates in my arms and promised them their sacrifices would mean something. In 2015, during an operation in a country I am not permitted to name, I led a team to rescue 23 American hostages from a terrorist compound. The mission went wrong almost immediately. Our extraction was compromised, our support was cut off, and we found ourselves surrounded by over 50 enemy combatants. I ordered my team to get the hostages out while I held the position. For 7 hours, I fought alone. I was shot 3 times. In the shoulder, in the leg, in the side. I lost so much blood that the medics who finally reached me were amazed I was still conscious, let alone still fighting. But I held that position, and every single hostage made it home. 3 months later, in a private ceremony at the White House, the President of the United States placed the Medal of Honor around my neck, the highest military decoration in the nation, awarded for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. The ceremony was classified, the mission was classified. My name was never released to the public, but the record exists. And when Officer Crew ran my ID through the system, that record flagged to every federal database that monitors such things. In an instant, I went from domestic violence suspect to one of the most decorated soldiers in American history. And my wife, standing in our living room with fake bruises on her face and a smile on her lips, had no idea. I called Admiral Sterling Bancroft at 6:47 a.m. He answered on the first ring. "Caspian, what the hell happened?" My wife tried to frame me for assault, had me arrested at 3 in the morning. A long pause. Then, "Vivian did this?" "Yes." "Why?" "Money, custody, the usual. She wants out, and she wanted to make sure I couldn't fight back." "Does she know about your service record?" "No, I never told her the details. She thinks I was a desk officer who pushed papers for 20 years. Another pause. I could hear him processing, calculating, the same tactical mind that had guided me through 100 missions now turning its attention to this new battlefield. "This is about to become very complicated," he said finally. "I know. The moment your file flagged, it went to DOD, DHS, and about 6 other agencies. They're going to want to know why a Medal of Honor recipient is sitting in a county, holding cell on domestic charges. They're going to want to investigate." "Good. Let them investigate. They'll find out the truth." "And Vivian?" "She made a mistake, Admiral. She tried to destroy a man she didn't understand. Now she's going to learn what happens when you pick a fight with someone who spent 20 years learning how to win." I heard something that might have been a laugh. "God help her." "I don't think he will." "I'm on my way." 2 hours, maybe 3. Don't say anything else to the local police until I get there. And Caspian?" "Yes?" "I'm sorry. I know how much you loved her." I closed my eyes, thought about the woman I had married 15 years ago, the woman who had seemed so kind, so normal, so unlike the chaos of my operational life, the woman I had trusted with my heart, if not my secrets. "I did love her," I said quietly, "but I don't think she ever loved me." While I waited for the Admiral, Sergeant Marlowe began her own investigation. She was thorough. I had to give her credit. She didn't trust the federal flags or the phone calls from Washington. She wanted to understand the situation for herself. First, she reviewed the 911 call Vivian had made. He's attacking me, please. You have to send someone. He's going to kill me. Vivienne's voice, terrified, desperate, the perfect victim. Then she reviewed the body cam footage from the arrest. The officers kicking in the door. Me, calm and compliant, making no threatening moves. Vivienne, standing in the doorway, watching with that strange smile on her face. "Rewind that," Marlowe said to Officer Crew, "the part where the wife is standing in the doorway." They watched it again. Vivienne's face caught in the officer's flashlights, the smile that didn't match her 911 performance, the casual posture of someone enjoying a show. "That's not how a domestic violence victim looks," Marlowe said quietly. "No, ma'am, it isn't." Next, she examined the bruises on Vivienne's face. The photographs taken at the scene showed a purple mark on her left cheek, another on her upper arm, consistent with being struck by a right-handed attacker. But Sergeant Marlowe noticed something else. "The bruising pattern is wrong," she said. "If someone hit her with enough force to leave marks like this, there would be swelling around the impact site. Broken capillaries in a specific direction. This looks like—" she paused. "This looks like pressure, bruising. Like she pressed something hard against her skin for an extended period. Self-inflicted? Possibly. We'd need a medical examiner to confirm." They called in a forensic specialist. By 9 a.m., the preliminary report was clear. The bruises on Vivienne's face and arm were inconsistent with assault trauma. The coloring, the pattern, the depth of tissue damage, all of it suggested deliberate, self-applied pressure rather than blows from another person. My wife had injured herself to frame me, and now there was evidence to prove it. Admiral Bancroft arrived at 10:15 a.m. He was 70 years old, silver-haired, with the ramrod posture of a career naval officer and eyes that had seen every kind of horror the world could produce. He walked into the police station like he owned it, 2 DOD officials trailing in his wake, and demanded to see me immediately. They brought me to the conference room. "Caspian." He clasped my hand, held it for a moment. "You look like hell. Look, it's been a long night." "I can imagine." He sat down across from me, waving the DOD officials to seats along the wall. "Tell me everything." So I did. The deterioration of my marriage, Vivienne's growing resentment, the distance between us that had become impossible to bridge, my suspicion that she was having an affair, though I hadn't confirmed it, and finally the 3 a.m. raid, her laughing face, the handcuffs, the cell. When I finished, the Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "The local police have already found inconsistencies in her story," he said finally. "The bruising pattern doesn't match assault trauma. The 911 call doesn't match her demeanor at the scene. And apparently, she's been calling her lawyer every hour, demanding to know when you'll be formally charged. She's worried. She should be. But Caspian, there's something else you need to know." "What?" "When your file flagged, it triggered a standard background check on everyone associated with you, including Vivienne." He pulled a folder from his briefcase. "She's been having an affair for 2 years, a man named Rhett Kensington. Wealthy businessman, lots of connections, not entirely clean legally. I had suspected the affair. Hearing it confirmed was like pressing on a bruise. Painful, but not surprising. There's more. 3 months ago, Vivienne and Rhett had a series of conversations that were flagged by our monitoring systems. They discussed how to remove you from the picture, how to ensure she got the house, the children, and access to your financial accounts. They planned this. Extensively, they researched domestic violence laws, consulted with an attorney, a woman named Priscilla Delaney, who has a history of representing wealthy women in contentious divorces, and developed a strategy to have you arrested and convicted. The false bruises, the 911 call, the timing, all of it was coordinated." I sat back. Let the information sink in. She didn't just want a divorce. I said slowly. She wanted to destroy me. Yes, and she almost succeeded. The Admiral leaned forward. "But she made one critical error, Caspian. She didn't know who you were. She thought you were a broken-down desk officer with PTSD and a modest pension. She didn't know about the Medal of Honor. She didn't know about the clearance level. She didn't know that the moment your ID hit the system, it would flag to every federal agency in the country. So what happens now? Now, the Admiral smiled grimly. Now we destroy her instead. The investigation moved fast once the federal agencies got involved. Within 48 hours, they had accumulated enough evidence to charge Vivian with multiple felonies: filing a false police report, conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice. The phone records between her and Rhett were damning. Detailed discussions of their plan, including specific instructions on how to create the fake bruises, what to say to the 911 operator, and how to behave when the police arrived. They arrested her on a Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't there for it. I was at my mother's house with Wren and Jasper, trying to explain to my children why their mother wouldn't be coming home. "Is Mommy in trouble?" Jasper asked. He was 11, old enough to sense that something was wrong, young enough to still believe his parents could fix anything. "Yes, buddy, Mommy made some bad choices, and now she has to face the consequences." "Did she do something to you?" I hesitated. How do you explain to a child that their mother tried to have their father arrested, that she fabricated injuries, lied to the police, attempted to destroy the family she had helped create? "She told some lies," I said carefully. "Lies that could have hurt me very badly, and lying is wrong, especially to the police. Are you okay, Daddy?" I pulled him into a hug, felt his small arms wrap around me, holding on with the desperate strength of a child who had just learned that the world was more complicated than he'd thought. "I'm okay, buddy. I'm always going to be okay, and I'm always going to be here for you and your sister." Wren was quieter. At 14, she understood more than her brother, could see the implications of what had happened. She looked at me with eyes that were too old for her face. "You're a hero, aren't you?" she said. "That's why the police let you go. That's why all those important people came to the house." I met her gaze. "I did some things when I was younger, in the military, things that earned me certain recognition." "What kind of things?" "The kind I can't talk about, the kind that are classified." I took her hand. "But what matters now isn't what I did in the past. What matters is that I'm here, with you and Jasper, and that we're going to get through this together." "What about Mom?" "That's not up to me anymore, it's up to the law." She nodded slowly, processing, accepting. "I'm glad you're our dad," she said finally. "I'm glad you're the one who's here." I pulled her into the hug with Jasper, held both my children tight, feeling their hearts beat against mine. "I'm glad too," I whispered, "more than you'll ever know." The trial took place 6 months later. Vivian's attorney, the same Priscilla Delaney who had helped plan the original scheme, tried every trick in the book. She argued that the phone recordings were inadmissible. She claimed the forensic analysis of the bruises was flawed. She painted Vivian as the victim of an abusive husband who had manipulated the evidence to escape justice. None of it worked. The prosecution presented the 911 call alongside the body cam footage. The jury heard Vivian's terrified voice, then watched her standing in the doorway with a smile on her face. They saw the inconsistency immediately. The forensic pathologist walked them through the bruise analysis, showing how the coloring and pattern were consistent with self-inflicted, pressured trauma rather than assault. The phone records were admitted as evidence of conspiracy, revealing in detail how Vivian and Rhett had planned every step of the scheme. And then came the character witnesses. Admiral Bancroft testified about my service record, about the missions I had led, about the men and women I had saved, about the Medal of Honor that had been awarded in a classified ceremony, a decoration earned through sacrifice and valor beyond anything most people could imagine. The jury listened in silence. When he finished, several of them were in tears. Vivian's attorney had no response. How do you argue that a man is a violent domestic abuser when he's a certified American hero? How do you convince a jury that a Medal of Honor recipient, a man who had risked everything for his country, would suddenly turn into a monster? You can't. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in federal prison. Rhett Kensington, charged as he Co-conspirator received 5 years. Priscilla Delaney was disbarred. Justice, at last. After the trial, Officer Langston Crew came to see me. He was the young officer who had first checked my ID, the one who had saluted in the holding cell when he realized who I was. He looked different now, older somehow, despite only 6 months having passed. Captain Thorne, I wanted to apologize. For what? For how we handled everything. The raid, the arrest. We came into your home like you were a criminal, based on nothing but your wife's word. You were doing your job. You had a domestic violence call, a woman with bruises, a situation that looked dangerous. You responded appropriately. But we were wrong. Yes, and you figured that out. You checked my ID. You asked the right questions. You treated me with respect when you realized the truth. I extended my hand. That's all anyone can ask. He shook it. His grip was firm, steady. For what it's worth, sir, I read some of the unclassified stuff about your service record. The things you did. He shook his head. I can't imagine. You don't want to. No, I suppose not. He released my hand. If you ever need anything, Captain, anything at all, you know where to find me. I appreciate that, Officer Crew, but right now all I need is to focus on my kids. That's my mission now. He nodded, saluted, one more time, a gesture of respect that I hadn't earned in his eyes but that he offered anyway. Good luck, sir. Thank you. He walked away, and I watched him go, thinking about how differently that night could have ended. If he hadn't checked my ID, if he hadn't seen the flag, if he hadn't asked the question that changed everything. Sir, who else knows about this? The answer, as it turned out, was everyone who needed to. And now Vivian knew too. Too late. 2 years have passed since that night. I'm 50 now. Still living in the same house. Vivian's lawyers tried to take it during the divorce proceedings, but given her criminal conviction, that argument went nowhere. I kept the house, the pension, and most importantly, full custody of Wren and Jasper. Wren is 16 now, applying to colleges, talking about maybe following in my footsteps and attending the Naval Academy. I told her I'd support whatever she chose, but secretly, the idea fills me with pride. She has her mother's beauty, but my determination. She'll go far. Jasper's 13. He's discovered a passion for robotics, spending hours in the garage building devices I can barely understand. He's quieter than he used to be. The events of 2 years ago left scars that are still healing. But he's strong. Stronger than he knows. I still have nightmares. Still wake up in the darkness, heart pounding, reaching for weapons that aren't there. The PTSD doesn't go away. You learn to live with it, manage it, carry it like a weight that becomes part of your body. But I also have good days. Days when I take the kids to the movies, or help with homework, or just sit on the back porch watching the sunset over the hills. Days when I remember that the fighting is over, that I've done my duty, that whatever peace I've earned was bought with 20 years of service and blood and sacrifice. Vivienne writes to me sometimes, from prison. The letters are angry, bitter, full of accusations and demands and threats that have no teeth. I read them once, then burned them. She's not my problem anymore. Rhett stopped writing after the first year. I heard through the grapevine that he found religion in prison, that he's trying to become a different person. Maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. Either way, I don't care. What matters is my children. What matters is the life we're building together, the three of us, rising from the ashes of what Vivian tried to destroy. She thought she knew me. She thought I was weak. She was wrong. Last month, Wren asked me about the Medal of Honor. We were sitting on the back porch, watching fireflies dance in the darkness when she brought it up. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. The thing you got, the medal. What did you actually do? I was quiet for a long moment. The details were still classified, would probably remain classified for the rest of my life, but there were things I could tell her, things she deserved to know. There were people in danger, I said finally. Americans. Civilians who were being held by very bad men in a very bad place. My team was sent to get them out. What happened? Everything went wrong. Our plan fell apart. We were surrounded, outnumbered, cut off from support. The only way to get those people to safety was for someone to hold off the enemy while the rest of the team evacuated. You volunteered. I did. Weren't you scared? I thought about that night. The darkness, the gunfire, the pain of the bullets tearing through my body, the certainty for long stretches that I was going to die in that place. I was terrified, I admitted. But fear doesn't mean you stop doing what needs to be done. It means you do it anyway. That's what courage is, not the absence of fear, but the determination to act in spite of it. Wren was quiet for a moment. Is that why Mom's thing didn't work? Because you know how to handle scary situations? Maybe. Or maybe it's just that I've learned to trust my instincts, to stay calm when everything is falling apart, to think clearly when other people would panic. I looked at her. Your mother made a mistake. She assumed I would react emotionally, that I would fight back in ways that made me look guilty. Instead, I cooperated. I let the system do its job, and the truth came out. What if it hadn't? What if they'd believed her? Then I would have fought in court, with lawyers and evidence and the full weight of everything I've done for this country. I paused, but I had faith that the truth would come out. I had faith that the people investigating would see through her lies. That's a lot of faith. It is, but faith is all we have sometimes. Faith that the good guys will win. Faith that justice will prevail. Faith that the things we've done, the sacrifices we've made, will matter in the end. Wren leaned against my shoulder. I'm proud of you, Dad. I'm proud of you too, sweetheart, more than you'll ever know. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it sounds like something from a movie. Police kicking in the door at 3 a.m. A wife laughing as her husband is arrested. An ID check that reveals a secret identity. An officer who salutes a man in handcuffs. But it happened. Every word of it. My wife tried to destroy me. She faked injuries, filed false reports, orchestrated a scheme to have me arrested and convicted and erased from my children's lives. She thought she knew who I was. A quiet man, a broken man, a man who could be crushed and discarded. She was wrong. She didn't know about the 20 years of service. The 47 classified missions. The Medal of Honor that hangs in a display case in my office. A reminder of the worst and best night of my life. She didn't know that when Officer Crew ran my ID, it would flag to every federal database in the country. Didn't know that the moment that flag appeared, her entire scheme was doomed. Sir, who else knows about this? That's what the officer whispered after he saluted. The answer, in the end, was everyone who mattered. And now my wife is in prison, my children are safe, and I'm finally at peace. Now, I want to ask you something. What would you do if someone tried to frame you for a crime, but didn't know your true identity? Have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought they knew you? Have you ever had to stay calm in a situation where everyone expected you to panic? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, especially anyone who has ever been underestimated, undervalued, or counted out. Comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story. I'll see you in the next one. It's Saturday morning now. Jasper's in the garage, working on his latest robotics project. Wren is at the kitchen table, filling out college applications. The house is quiet, peaceful, filled with the ordinary sounds of a family going about its day. The medal is in my office. I look at it sometimes, not with pride exactly, but with something like acceptance. That medal represents the worst night of my life and the best thing I ever did. It's a reminder that courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about doing what needs to be done, no matter how scared you are. Vivienne tried to destroy this family. She failed. Not because I'm a hero, not because I have a piece of metal that says I did something brave once upon a time. She failed because she underestimated me. She saw a quiet man and assumed he was weak. She saw a man who didn't talk about his past and assumed there was nothing to talk about. She saw a man who loved her, who trusted her, who wanted nothing more than to be a good husband and father, and she assumed she could use that love against him. She was wrong. And now, 2 years later, I'm sitting in my house with my children, watching the morning light stream through the windows, thinking about all the ways my life could have gone differently. I could have lost everything that night. Instead, I'm here, alive, free, at peace. Because when they kicked down my door at 3 a.m., when they threw me on the floor and put me in handcuffs, when my wife stood there laughing and claiming she had won, I didn't panic. I didn't fight. I trusted the truth, and the truth set me free.